food processing. So if among you are interested sa mango grading school natin, meron po ang USCITI food processing yan. So that's brief commercial lang po. No?
Mango training lang.
So now, after talking about the importance of metrology in food processing, how do we know if our packaging materials are safe from contaminants? So our next speaker is equipped with a bachelor's degree in chemistry and master's degree in environmental science from the University of the Philippines. He is one of the country's pioneers in metrology, particularly fields of inorganic and environmental chemistry. He facilitated the production of several inorganic reference materials and provision of accuracy-based proficiency testing schemes for local laboratories before he transferred to the Packaging Technology Division. Currently, he is the laboratory head of the Packaging Testing Laboratory and oversees the conduct of researches on packaging contaminants. Here to discuss metrology in packaging and food safety, Mr. Elyson Encarnacion.
So, good morning everyone. For this presentation, I would be focusing more on the packaging side since this is my area of interest. However, it should be noted that the principles also apply in both food and also packaging. And let me just remind you that products used in this presentation is not any way to advertise or to discredit, but for the sole purpose of lecturing. So let's begin. Thank you again. Gusto kong patapusin. Okay, so in 1996, a 3-year-old girl was found to have high levels of lead in her blood. So when health agencies tried to investigate, they found out that this girl was regularly consuming one of the famous Filipino menthol candy, the Sword candy. It's actually one of my favorites when I was here. So, unlike here in the country, in the US, they have already set a limit for lead, which is 0.1 ppm in lead in wrapper. So what happened was that when they analyzed just 1/10 of the wrapper, they found 80 times the concentration of what was considered safe. So what happened is that, as a result, the US FDA requested the Filipino company to pull out the products in the international market, so that resulted sort of damage our economy as well. But they also had to sell the company, actually half of the company, and they had to rebrand the candy. So fast forward to today. So around 3 decades later, unlike in food where we already have a lot of standards, we have a scarcity of standards with respect to food contact or packaging materials. So in fact, we only can name around 2 at most. So the first is on bisphenol A from infant feeding bottles, and the second is the voluntary certification of food contact articles. So let's just note that the word here is voluntary. So companies are not mandated or are not allowed to. They can have their samples tested, but according to their preference. So DOST, ITDI started with initiatives on food contact safety. So the first is we created a safety team. So it's a group of champions under the Packaging Technology Division that facilitates studies on food contact materials and articles. The second initiative was we were able to coordinate with FDA Philippines regarding the profiling of contaminants in local food contact materials and articles. So in fact, this was what Sir Admiral stated earlier, since FDA is the one in charge of regulations with respect to prepackaged foods. So when we had this meeting with FDA, they were actually very interested. They expressed interest that they wanted to profile the local food contact materials nationwide. So since nakikita niyo po sa previous, we're only 5, medyo, ano yan, malaki-laki yung pang nationwide. They want to profile all the food contact articles. And hopefully, we'll be able to draft, to assist FDA to be able to draft the guidelines. And finally, third, the third initiative of DOSDI today is when we were able to commence our own researches on food contact materials and articles. So the first one, to name a few, is epoxidized soybean oil. So this is ESBO. ESBO is known to damage the uterus in laboratory rats. So they were found in glass bottles with metal closure. So they sort of reach out of the enclosure, and since it's oil, it's organic compound, they tend to seep into or to dissolve in products that are oily. So what can be named as oily bottle foods? We have our Spanish sardines, we have our peanut butter, we have our chili garlic oil. So just to name some. Also, we have a research on total organic contaminants in reused, repurposed, recycled, reheated, and refrigerated plastics. So we know that the Filipinos were sort of very resourceful, right? So in terms of reusing, like when in our refilling stations, we reuse the plastic containers, and in fact, we only dispose it kapag sira na siya, right? So ilang beses, like when we put the water inside the blue container, how is the migration of contaminants from the plastic container to the water that we are refilling? And then we also have our repurpose. So like for example, our ice cream tubs. Like when, diba, it's a regular joke in our country na pagbukas natin, pwedeng hindi ice cream yung laman ng ating ice cream tubs. It could be, let's say, your tilapia, some other type of food product. Is that compatible? Next is recycled. So recycled, we also have recycled plastics. Reheated or microwavable plastics. Every time you microwave, are there contaminants migrating into the food? Kasi diba remember, like when we use, like, especially if the food has tomato sauce, you can see that it's sort of stains. It already means, it's sort of an indication that there's already like a contact between the food product and the container. And also refrigerated plastics or frozen when you also place it in the freezer. I know there are several people also that put microwavable plastics in their freezers because they want it to look organized. But microwavable plastics in freezers are, diba, usually they become brittle. So that's actually one of the things. It could possibly lead to migration of contaminants. Also, we have our phthalates in plastic packaging. So phthalates are carcinogenic, cancer-inducing, and since they're plastics, how about our milk tea lovers? We also have your ramen lovers. So that's one of the studies. And finally, one that is closer to my heart is because it's our project is the perpolyfluoroalkyl substances, so PFAS. And what's interesting about PFAS is that it's vaccine suppressing. So in this time of pandemic, or also about children na kailangan ma-administer ng mga vaccines. So if it's vaccine suppressing, then the effects of the vaccine could be lowered down. Lalo na if we try to order, let's say in paper packaging, mataas yung concentration of PFAS, and then there's actual migration, then it could possibly lead to the suppression of the vaccine. So kasi yung mga paper packaging natin sa mga take-out, delivery, we have our pizza, burgers, burger wrappers, sa fries. So this is our actually our food contact safety framework. Nandun pa lang po sa left side. Medyo malaki po yung bubunuin natin. So hindi ko na rin i-discuss the entire framework, but we will go to a specific pathway. So this is a closer picture of the one of the pathways in the framework. So here, we can actually see how metrology is very important in this pathway. So like for example, in terms of method development and validation, we would be needing food contact certified reference materials. Yung certified reference materials are materials of known concentrations. They have uncertainties, and kadalasan kasi, ang meron tayo are CRM on food. Yung food yung tinitest. But how about packaging? If alam natin nagkakaroon din pala ng migration from the packaging to the food. So this is something that we hope our National Metrology Division will also be able to address so that we can also have reference materials on food contact. Second is on migration study. So yung kanina po kasi, we try to analyze the contaminants in the actual packaging. Pero we are studying how the contaminants are migrating to the food product. So there is a study called migration studies wherein we are now exposing the packaging to the simulant. And simulants could be, let's say, we have simulants for aqueous food, we have simulants for oily food, for alcoholic. So we have different simulants for different types of food. Kasi if we're going to use actual food, it will be very complex to analyze. So we're just using simulants. In fact, we also need certified reference materials here. So for example, here we have a certified reference material from abroad, which is plastic film, which is in olive oil. So this would like to mimic the contaminants migrating from plastic to some oily food. And also, for food contact safety, we need to have traceable measuring instruments. So we have our National Metrology Division calibrating us so that we can go directly to the SI namin. Now, finally, to end my presentation. So there are several advantages of metrology in food contact safety. And in fact, Nia may already discussed some of this. So first is to provide accurate info on packaging and food and beverage products. So like for example, our net weight, when we declare an incorrect net weight, then the consumers will not feel that they have been cheated on. Second would be concentration of nutrients, minerals, vitamins, and additives, so that we know as consumers, am I getting the right nourishment? Third, expiration date, so that we know when to consume the food product or the beverage. And third, storage conditions, so that we know we can actually put our food or beverage at the right environmental conditions. Second is to prevent the adverse effects on the public's health and safety. So just like similar to our case study earlier, so that someday there will be no more reports of a girl having, 3-year-old girl having high levels of lead in her blood. Third would be to avoid product recall. So imagine the case earlier also where our Filipino company pulled their products from the international market. So this, hopefully we will no longer experience this and damage the economy. Fourth is to penetrate regulated markets. So in the West, they have already established limits for particular contaminants. So finally, our industries, if they will be able to conform to this, will be able to enter these markets, and we will have a higher, let's say, GDP. And last is to protect the environment. I have included this, partially because I'm also environmental science, but also because we know that one of the, let's say, garbage or trash in the country is really packaging. So it's quite mismanaged. So imagine if a packaging that has high levels of contaminants is, let's say, binaon siya, or it was placed in a landfill, then contaminants can leach and contaminate the ground. If the packaging would be taken to the seas or sa rivers natin, then the contaminants will migrate to our bodies of water. So, and I guess I was able to highlight everything that the advantages of metrology in our food contact and also environment. And with that, thank you very much.